Nobody stopped. That is the part that is going to stay with you long after this story is over. It was midnight on I-35, one of the busiest highways in the entire United States, the spine of Texas, the road that connects everything from the Mexican border all the way north to the Oklahoma line. 18-wheelers the size of apartment buildings doing 75 miles an hour. Headlights coming and going like a river that never sleeps. And on the narrow gravel shoulder, barely 2 feet from traffic that could end a life without even tapping the brakes, there was a woman. She was sitting on the ground. She had a baby pressed against her chest, and she was crying so hard she could not stand up. 31 vehicles passed her in the 11 minutes before Dora Reyes came over that rise on her Harley Road King and saw her in the sweep of her headlight. 31. Some of them slowed down. You could see it in the brake lights. They flickered briefly, like a conscience blinking. They saw her. They thought about it. And then they kept going. Dora did not think about it. She was already pulling onto the shoulder before her brain had finished processing what her eyes had seen. Because Dora Reyes had been on the road long enough to know that some things you do not decide. Some things your hands and your instincts decide for you, and you just follow. What happened over the next 48 hours would change both of their lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. And it would remind every single person who heard about it exactly what it really means, to stop. To understand why Dora was on I-35 at midnight on a Tuesday in late October, you need to understand something about how she lived. Dora Reyes did not keep normal hours. She hadn't for years. The road had become her clock. She rode when she needed to think, when she needed to let the pressure out, when the walls of whatever room she was in started feeling like they were closing in. And lately, the walls had been closing in a lot. She was 43 years old. She had co-founded Iron Magnolia 18 years earlier, and in that time she had watched it grow from 2 women and 2 bikes in a rented garage off South Congress Avenue in Austin, into something that stretched across 5 states, 60 active members, and more stories than she could count. She was proud of it. The kind of proud that is not loud, not performed. The deep, settled kind that lives in your chest and does not need anyone else to confirm it. But leadership is heavy. It is heavy in ways nobody tells you about when you are in the good early days. When you are dreaming and building and pulling other people into the dream with you, the weight comes later. It builds the way sediment builds at the bottom of a river. Invisible, gradual, until one day you realize it is the only thing you can feel. She had spent that entire day in San Antonio managing a conflict between 2 chapter members that had been simmering for 3 weeks and finally boiled over that morning at 10 a.m. 2 women she respected. 2 women who both had legitimate grievances, and neither of whom was entirely wrong. The kind of situation where no solution is clean, where the best you can do is the least bad thing. She had sat with both of them, separately and then together. She had listened more than she had spoken. She had left both of them feeling heard without completely validating either position, which is one of the hardest things a human being can do, and also one of the most exhausting. By the time she got back on her Road King at 9:30 that night and pointed north on I-35, she was completely hollowed out. The kind of tired that sleep alone does not fix. The kind that only miles and wind and the specific silence inside a helmet at highway speed can begin to address. She had been riding for 50 minutes just south of the Buda exit when the highway dipped and then rose and her headlight swung across the shoulder, and she saw her. Later, when people asked Dora to describe that first moment, she always said the same thing. Her brain tried to reject what her eyes were showing it. Not because it was complicated, but because the image was so completely wrong, so completely out of place, that there was a half-second delay between seeing and understanding. A young woman, mid-20s, though it was hard to know for certain, because she was curled forward, hunched over whatever she was holding. Dark hair, long, some of it fallen loose and some of it stuck to her face from the crying. A light jacket, not nearly enough for a late October night in Texas when the temperature had dropped to the low 50s. No bag visible, no suitcase, no car broken down anywhere nearby, no hazard lights flashing in the dark. Just a woman on the ground on the shoulder of a highway where nobody was supposed to be standing, let alone sitting, holding what Dora's headlight confirmed in the next half second was a baby. An infant. Small enough to be brand new, wrapped in a fleece blanket the color of sky blue, pressed tight against the woman's chest. Dora had her kickstand down before she had consciously decided to stop. She cut the engine. The sudden relative quiet was enormous. After 50 minutes of highway noise, pulling off was like stepping from one world into a completely different one. She could hear the woman crying even before she got off the bike. That specific kind of crying that has passed the point of control, where your whole body is involved and there is nothing left to hold back, and you are no longer even aware that anyone could hear you because you stopped caring about that some time ago. Dora did not rush toward her. One thing she had learned over years of unexpected encounters on roadsides and rest stops and parking lots at strange hours was that rushing at a person in distress, especially a woman, especially at night, especially when the person rushing is a stranger in a leather vest who just got off a motorcycle, can make everything worse. She approached slowly. She made sure her footsteps were audible. She crouched down about 4 feet away, low and still, non-threatening, eye level. "Hey," Dora said, just that. Not "are you okay," because clearly she was not. Not "what happened," because that could wait. Just one word, just a presence. Just proof that someone was there. The woman looked up. Her eyes were swollen nearly shut from crying. In the ambient light from the highway behind them, Dora could see that she was younger than she had thought from a distance. 22, 23 at most. And the expression on her face was not just grief. It was something more specific and more devastating than grief. It was the look of someone who had given up on being found, who had stopped expecting anything from the world beyond whatever was happening to them at that exact moment, and had settled into simply enduring it, minute by minute, on the gravel shoulder of this road. When she looked up and saw Dora, the leather vest, the Road King still ticking down behind her, a woman crouching down to meet her eyes, something crossed her face that Dora knew immediately. Not relief yet. Something more fragile than relief and harder to name. The tentative, terrified flicker of maybe. "She's okay," the young woman said. Her voice was destroyed from crying, barely a whisper. She pulled the edge of the blanket back just enough to show the baby's face, small mouth moving slightly in that unconscious way that sleeping newborns have, like they are practicing words they have not learned yet. "She's okay. I didn't know where else to go." Dora sat down on the gravel next to her, not beside her bike. On the ground, on the cold shoulder of I-35 with the traffic still roaring past them in the dark, and the wind from every passing truck pushing against them. She did not say anything for a moment. She sat close enough that the woman could feel she was not alone, and she waited. Her name was Maya Castillo. She was 22 years old. She had been born in Laredo and grown up partly there and partly in San Antonio. And for the last 14 months, she'd been living in a one-bedroom apartment in Kyle, Texas, with a man named Derek. She did not say his last name that first night. She would say it later. And when she finally did, the way she said it, flat and careful, the way you handle something with a sharp edge, told Dora everything she needed to know about what that name had come to mean. The baby's name was Rosie. She was 11 days old. Maya had left the apartment at 6:30 that evening. She had not planned it. She had not packed a bag, had not called anyone, had not formed anything resembling a plan. She had just left. She had been sitting in the kitchen feeding Rosie when Derek came home, and she heard his voice. Not what he said, just the tone of it. The particular frequency that she had learned over 14 months meant the night was going to be bad. And something in her body made a decision that her mind had not caught up to yet. Something older than thought. Something that had apparently been waiting for exactly the right moment to finally say enough. She had wrapped Rosie in the fleece blanket from the back of the couch. She had walked to the front door. She had not taken her phone because it was charging in the bedroom, and going in there would have meant walking past him. And the part of her that was now making all the decisions said no to that without hesitation. She had walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. She had taken the first bus that came. She had used the last $32 in her jacket pocket to buy a Greyhound ticket from the Kyle stop to Austin, where she had a cousin named Maria whose address she knew from memory, but whose phone number she had never learned because it had always just been in her phone. The bus had broken down on I-35 south of Buda. An engine issue, the driver said. 20 minutes to fix. 20 became 40. People on the bus were annoyed. a few of them loud about it. Maya had gotten off to walk Rosie, who was fussing, because a newborn on a stopped bus surrounded by impatient strangers was not a combination she had the capacity to manage. She walked back and forth on the gravel beside the highway, rocking Rosie in the slow rhythm that sometimes was the only thing that worked, until the baby settled into sleep. She turned around to get back on the bus. The bus was gone. The driver had announced the all clear, waited what he considered a reasonable amount of time, and left. Maya's small bag, the one her body had grabbed while her brain was still catching up to the decision to leave, the one that contained 2 diapers and a small container of formula and 1 change of clothes for Rosie, was on that bus, headed to Austin without her. Her jacket pocket held 73 cents. She had sat down on the shoulder because her legs stopped working. That was exactly how she would describe it later. Not that she decided to sit, but that her legs simply stopped, the way a phone goes dark when the battery finally hits 0. And she had been sitting there for 11 minutes with the enormous, indifferent machinery of I-35 roaring past her, when a single headlight came over the rise and did not go past her. Dora listened to all of it sitting on the cold gravel. She did not interrupt. She did not ask clarifying questions or try to move the story along. She had learned long ago that when someone is in the middle of telling you the worst night of their life, the greatest thing you can give them is the kind of stillness that makes them feel safe enough to keep going. When Maya reached the end, or rather, when she arrived at the point where the words ran out and the crying took over again, Dora made the first of several decisions. She called Carmen. Carmen Vega answered on the second ring. It was 12:17 in the morning, and Carmen answered on the second ring because Carmen was a night person, and because Dora calling after midnight meant something was happening, and Carmen had always, in 18 years, wanted to be the person who picked up when something was happening. "I'm on I-35 northbound shoulder, just past the Buddha mile markers," Dora said. "I have a young woman and a newborn. She needs a ride tonight and a place to sleep. Can you come?" There was a pause. 2 seconds. Not the pause of someone deciding. Carmen had already decided. The pause of someone running logistics in their head. 40 minutes, Carmen said. "I'm bringing blankets." Bring food too, and water. Already on it. That was the thing about Carmen Vega. In 18 years of friendship and co-leadership, Dora had never once had to explain context to her. You gave her the facts and she supplied everything else herself accurately every single time. It is the rarest kind of person, the one who does not need the whole story to know what the story needs. Dora put her phone away and looked at Maya, who had watched the entire phone call with an expression caught between hope and the inability to fully trust hope. The face of someone who has been disappointed enough times that hope now arrives with a warning label. "Someone's coming," Dora said. 40 minutes. She's going to take you somewhere warm and safe tonight. You and Rosie both." Maya looked at her for a moment. "Why?" she asked. Not confrontationally, genuinely, heartbreakingly, genuinely asking. As though the idea of a stranger pulling over on a highway and calling for help required an explanation that she could not supply herself. As though kindness, unrequested and unconditional, was something she had stopped being able to account for. Dora thought about it for a moment, not because she did not know the answer, because she wanted to give the real one. "Because you're on the road," she said, "and nobody on this road gets left behind." Those 40 minutes were their own kind of story. Dora kept a small emergency kit strapped under the back of her Road King. She had for years because the road had taught her long ago that the question was never whether something unexpected would happen, but only when. She carried a foil emergency blanket, a bottle of water, 2 granola bars, a phone charger cable, and a first aid kit no bigger than a paperback book. She wrapped the foil blanket around Maya's shoulders. She gave her the water and one of the granola bars. Maya ate the granola bar in a way that told Dora she had not eaten in a while, not urgently. More like someone who had forgotten that hunger was a thing that could be addressed, who was relearning a basic function by doing it one small piece at a time. Rosie slept through most of it, which felt like a mercy from something. She stirred once, made a sound that was 2 seconds from becoming real crying, and Maya shifted her and hummed, a low, automatic sound, the kind a mother's body learns before the mind even knows it is learning. And Rosie settled, Maya's eyes stayed on the highway. "How long were you with him?" Dora asked. She asked it the way she asked most hard questions, quietly without weight on it, leaving every door open for Maya to answer, or not answer exactly as she chose. 14 months, Maya said, 11 good ones. She paused. Or I thought they were good. Now I think I was just learning where the line was, so I could stay on the right side of it. And then the line moved, Dora said. Maya looked at her. Yeah, she said, it always does, doesn't it? Dora didn't answer that directly, because the answer was complicated, and this was not the time for complicated. Instead, she said, you left, with an 11-day-old, with $32, without your phone. You left. That's not a small thing, Maya. That might be the biggest thing you have ever done. The young woman looked down at Rosie's sleeping face. Something in her expression shifted. Not relief yet, but the beginning of it. The very first loosening of something that had been held tight for a very long time. 2 18-wheelers passed them in quick succession, and the rush of displaced air pushed against both of them like a wall. Maya flinched, pulled herself tighter around the baby. Dora shifted slightly, moving her body between Maya and the travel lane. It was a gesture that did almost nothing in practical terms. It was the right gesture, and so she made it. They sat in silence after that. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind between two people where words have done the work they needed to do, and now rest is what is required. At 12:51 in the morning, a pair of headlights slowed on the highway behind them and pulled carefully onto the shoulder. A dark blue Chevy Suburban, hazard lights blinking orange in the dark. Carmen. Carmen Vega was 51 years old, 5'4", and operated at a frequency that most people spent their whole lives trying to find. She was the kind of person who had decided somewhere in her 30s that the problems of the world were her business, and had been acting accordingly ever since. She had been Dora's co-founder, her closest friend, her sharpest advisor, and on several occasions that Dora would remember for the rest of her life. The only person standing between her and a decision that would have cost her something she could not afford. She stepped out of the Suburban with a canvas bag over one shoulder and a thermos in each hand, and walked toward them like a woman who found strangers on the side of I-35 at 1 in the morning every other week and had long since stopped finding it unusual. I brought pozole, she said, as though this were the most natural greeting in the world. Left over from dinner, heated it up before I left, and chamomile. She looked at Maya the way Carmen looked at everyone. Not quickly, not politely, but with the full weight of her attention, reading things most people couldn't see. Then she said, Hi, I'm Carmen. That baby is stunning, and I need you to drink something warm before we do anything else. Something about Carmen's directness, the combination of warmth and zero nonsense, the way she made you feel simultaneously seen and cared for, visibly reached Maya in a way that nothing else had quite managed yet. She nodded. She took the thermos. Carmen looked over Maya's head at Dora. An entire conversation happened in that look. Dora gave the smallest possible nod. Carmen gave it back. Understood. Done. They helped Maya into the back seat of the Suburban. Dora followed them on her Road King, close enough to see the taillights the entire way, hanging back far enough to give the car space. The plan, assembled in 2 seconds of eye contact at the side of the highway, was Carmen's apartment in San Marcos. Quiet, warm, a guest room with a real bed and a real door, and Carmen herself, who was the most capable person Dora knew in exactly the kind of situation that required someone to be steady. It was 22 miles. They drove it carefully. By the time they pulled into Carmen's neighborhood, Rosie had woken up and was making the small, escalating sounds of a baby who has decided she is hungry now. And Maya was already reaching into the canvas bag Carmen had left on the seat beside her, which contained, of course because Carmen, 2 sealed cans of infant formula, a pack of newborn diapers, and a clean onesie still in its plastic sleeve. Maya slept for 11 hours. Carmen had set her up in the guest room, made sure she had everything she needed for Rosie, and then closed the door quietly and left her alone. The kind of hospitality that understands that sometimes the most generous thing you can offer another person is the dignity of not being watched. Dora stayed. She slept a few hours on Carmen's couch, woke before sunrise, put coffee on. Carmen found her at the kitchen table at 5:30, and they sat the way they had sat at kitchen tables together 100 times across 18 years of friendship. side by side with coffee, not needing to fill the silence, just thinking out loud when there was something to say. "What do we know?" Carmen asked. "Young woman, 22, left an unsafe home last night with an 11-day-old. Has a cousin in Austin named Maria. Doesn't have the number. Left without her phone. 73 cents in her pocket." Dora paused. "And she's been running on no sleep since she got here because a newborn eats every 2 hours and doesn't care what time it is." "What does she need?" Carmen asked. "Right now, formula, diapers, somewhere safe while she thinks. After that, she needs to reach her cousin. She needs to figure out what, if anything, she's going back to that apartment for. And she needs someone to make it clear to her without pressure, without telling her what to do, that she does not have to go back. Not for anything. Not ever." Carmen turned her coffee cup slowly in both hands. Is she going to want to go back? Dora thought about that for a moment. About the way Maya had said she's okay about Rosie before she had said anything at all about herself. About the way she had asked why when Dora said help was coming, as though it required an explanation. "I think last night she acted on instinct," Dora said. "The decision her body made before her mind caught up to it. Now she's going to have to make that decision consciously, and she's going to need something solid around her when she does." "So we give her something solid," Carmen said. Like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like it had always been that simple. "So we give her something solid," Dora said. Maya came out of the guest room at 11:17 in the morning. She had fed Rosie, changed her, dressed her in the clean onesie from Carmen's bag. She sat down at the kitchen table and Carmen put eggs and toast and tea in front of her and did not make a production of it. And Maya ate with the careful deliberateness of someone who had made a decision somewhere in those 11 hours to let herself accept what was being offered. One thing at a time. One meal at a time. After she finished eating, she looked at Dora and said, "I need to reach Maria, but I don't have her number." "What do you know about her?" Dora asked. "Full name, neighborhood, where she works, anything." "Maria Castillo. She lives somewhere in East Austin. Near Muller, I think. She works at a bakery. I don't know the name. Her mom is Teresa. She's my father's brother's daughter." Dora had her laptop open before Maya finished the sentence. It took 11 minutes. A combination of name, city, neighborhood, family connection, and a Facebook profile that was private but had a business tagged in a post from 2 years ago. La Paloma Bakery on Manor Road in East Austin. She called the bakery. A woman answered on the third ring. "Hi, I'm trying to reach Maria Castillo. I'm helping her cousin Maya. Maya needs to speak with her right away. Is Maria there?" There was a pause. Then, "This is Maria." Dora handed the phone across the table without another word. What happened next was one of those moments you are changed by, if you are paying attention when it arrives. Maya said her cousin's name, and then she could not say anything else for nearly 30 seconds because the crying that she had been managing all morning, that she had been managing for days, maybe weeks, maybe much longer than that, arrived all at once. The kind of crying that is not just sadness. The kind that is the body releasing something it has been holding for too long. The kind that means something is finally over. Dora and Carmen went to the living room and gave her the kitchen and the privacy she deserved. The call lasted 22 minutes. When Maya came back to the living room, her eyes were red and swollen, and her posture was different, straighter. Like someone who had been carrying something so long they'd stopped noticing the weight, and it had finally been set down. "She's coming," Maya said. "She's leaving work right now." She looked at Dora with an expression that was still figuring out how to hold the amount of gratitude it contained. "How did you find her?" "I've been finding things for a long time," Dora said. "It's not a special skill. It's just refusing to stop looking. There's a part of this story that requires a different kind of attention. Not because it becomes graphic. It does not. But because understanding what Maya had been living with means sitting in some discomfort, and that discomfort is exactly what it should cost to understand it properly." Derek Hollis was 28 years old. He worked in logistics for a shipping company in Kyle. He was, to outward appearances, completely unremarkable, the kind of person you pass in a hardware store and do not think about again. He had never put Maya in a hospital. His damage was of the kind that does not leave marks you can photograph. He was careful in the specific way that some people are careful, meaning that he understood exactly how much he could take without leaving evidence, and he never went past that line. He had spent 14 months making Maya smaller, not quickly, not obviously, the way you change the temperature of water 1 degree at a time. First, it was suggestions, quiet, reasonable sounding, about who she spent her time with. Then it was disappointment, always measured and calm, when she made choices he had not approved. Then it was the slow, patient reconstruction of reality. What was acceptable to say, what was acceptable to want, what was acceptable to feel, until Maya had become, by the time Rosie was 11 days old, a person who genuinely did not know she was allowed to have a preference about what happened to her own life. The night she left, he had not done anything that would have looked like anything to anyone watching. He had come home, heard Rosie crying, looked at Maya and said, quietly, without raising his voice, in the tone she had learned to read the way sailors read weather, "I thought you'd have this under control by now." 11 words. 11 words landing on top of 14 months of other words, other silences, other moments of being made to feel that her presence was a problem to be managed. And something in Maya, something that had been gathering itself quietly, waiting for the exact right moment, the moment when she could feel the truth of it clearly enough to move, rose up and said no more. She told this to Dora and Carmen across that afternoon, sitting in Carmen's living room with Rosie asleep on a blanket between them. She told it the way people tell the stories they have never told before. Not in a straight line, but circling, approaching, and then retreating, saying some things directly and leaving others in the spaces between words. Carmen and Dora listened. They did not characterize Derek. They did not tell Maya what she should do or how she should feel or what any of this meant. They let the story exist in the room without putting a frame around it, because sometimes that is the only right thing to do. At one point, Carmen stood up to refill her coffee and came back and paused beside Maya's chair and rested one hand briefly on her shoulder. 1 second. That was all. Maya did not say anything, but she reached up and covered Carmen's hand with her own for just a moment. And then Carmen sat down and the story continued. Maria Castillo arrived at Carmen's apartment at 2:17 that afternoon. She was 30 years old, taller than Maya, with the same dark eyes and the kind of presence that reminded Dora of Carmen. Warm and practical at the same time. The kind of person who shows up and starts solving problems before she has finished taking off her jacket. She held Maya in the doorway for a long time. Neither of them spoke. Rosie was awake, watching the ceiling with the enormous, unfocused attention of a very new person still learning that things exist. Maria pulled back from the hug and looked at her and said with complete conviction, "She is perfect." Maya laughed, short, surprised, real. The first real laugh of the last 24 hours. Dora gave them the living room. She and Carmen sat out on the small back patio with coffee and the October sun coming through the cedar trees and said very little, which was comfortable in the way that all silences are comfortable between people who have known each other long enough to not need to fill them. After about an hour, Maya came outside and stood in the doorway. Maria was behind her, holding Rosie. She looked at Dora. "I need to go get some things from the apartment," she said. "I don't want to go alone." 4 of them, Dora, Maria, and 2 other Iron Magnolia members that Dora had called that evening. Lisa Morrow, her road captain, who had been riding for 23 years and had a stillness about her in difficult situations that made everything around her feel more manageable, and a woman named Priya, who was a family law attorney, and had told Dora when she called, before Dora had finished explaining the situation, "I'll bring the paperwork." They drove to Kyle in 2 vehicles. They parked on the street. Derek's truck was not in the driveway. Maya had a key. Her hands were steady when she put it in the lock, which surprised her, she said later. She had expected them to shake. She walked inside and stood in the entryway of the apartment for a moment, just standing there, like someone checking whether a space still had the power to do what it used to do to her. Then she walked to the bedroom and started filling a bag. She knew exactly what she needed. That was the thing that struck Dora, standing in the hallway watching. Maya knew. She moved through the apartment with the certainty of someone who had been making this list in her head for longer than she had realized. Rosie's things first, then documents, birth certificates, her own ID, Rosie's hospital papers, the small folder she kept in the bottom dresser drawer where she had always put the things that mattered. Then clothes. Then the 2 photographs from the shelf by the window, the ones of her mother who had died when Maya was 16. She did not take anything that was his. She did not take anything that was not clearly hers. She was in and out in 26 minutes. When they got back to the cars, Priya sat with Maya on the tailgate of Maria's truck for 45 minutes going through options. Not pushing any of them, laying them out the way a good attorney lays things out, clearly, completely, without drama. Here is what exists. Here is what is available to you. Here is what each path looks like. You decide. Maya listened to all of it. She asked 3 questions. She made 2 decisions on the spot and said she needed time to think about the third. That was enough for one day. Dora rode back to Austin alone. She took I-35 again, northbound, the same highway, the same stretch of road where it had all started. It was mid-morning now, November light making everything look clean and deliberate, the kind of day that makes you feel like the world knows something you don't. She passed the spot. She knew exactly where it was. The slight rise, the way the shoulder widened just a little before the Buddha exit markers. She slowed without quite stopping, just enough to look. Nadi! There was nothing there, of course. Just gravel and dead grass and the white noise of traffic. No sign that anything had happened at that exact location 12 hours ago. The road does not mark the places where things change. It just keeps going. She thought about the 31 vehicles that had passed Maya and kept going. She did not think about them with judgment. At least, she tried not to. She had been on the road long enough to know that most people who drive past someone on the side of the highway at midnight are not bad people. They are scared people. They are people who do not know what they would be stepping into. They are people who have somewhere to be, people who have their own weight to carry, people who tell themselves that someone else will stop, that there are services for this, that it is not their place. She understood all of that. Mahi. She just happened to believe something different. The road keeps score, not loudly, not in ways that anyone announces, but somewhere in the long accounting of a life lived close to the asphalt, the highway remembers who stopped and who didn't. And more than that, like the people who stopped remember, they carry it differently after, like ballast, like something that makes you heavier and more stable at the same time. Dora had been stopped by strangers on that same highway twice in her life. Once at 24 on her second long solo ride, when her Sportster threw a chain in the dark near Georgetown, and a man in a pickup with a camper on the back spent an hour helping her get it sorted, refused to take any money and drove off with a wave. Once at 31 during the worst stretch of a very bad year, when she had pulled over simply because she needed to stop moving for a minute, and a woman she did not know had pulled up beside her and asked, without preamble, "You okay?" And when Dora had said no, not really, the woman had parked her car, sat on the guardrail with her, and stayed until Dora's breathing was back to normal. She had never seen either of those people again. She thought about them regularly. 3 weeks after that night on I-35, Maya Castillo was living in the second bedroom of Maria's apartment in East Austin. Rosie had gained just over a pound and was doing what healthy 1-month-olds do: eating, sleeping, making the small sounds that feel like the beginning of language. Maria had connected Maya with a legal aid organization that Priya had recommended. The process was beginning. It was not fast and it was not simple, but it was moving. Maya had gotten a new phone. She had Maria's number in it now. She had Dora's number. She had Carmen's number. She had Priya's number. The small infrastructure of people who would pick up when she called. She was building it, carefully, one contact at a time. She had texted Dora one evening, short, no preamble, and said, "I've been thinking about what you said. Nobody on this road gets left behind. I want to understand what that means. Can I come meet the club?" Dora had written back, "Saturday, 10 a.m. Austin chapter meetup. Come whenever you're ready." Maya had shown up at 9:50, with Rosie in a front carrier and a dozen kolaches from La Paloma Bakery, the place where Maria worked, the place that had led Dora to her cousin, the place that had become its own small symbol of how everything connects if you are willing to make the call. See, she had sat in the back of the room at first, the way people sit when they are not sure yet how much space they are allowed to take. And then Carmen had waved her up to the front table, and Maya had come and she had sat down, and she had looked around at the room full of women in Iron Magnolia colors and said nothing for a moment. Then she had said quietly, mostly to herself, "So this is what it looks like." "Yes," Carmen had said. This is exactly what it looks like. Dhaka, there is a question that every long-distance rider eventually has to answer for themselves. It is not about mechanical skill or endurance or which route to take. It is simpler than any of those things and harder than all of them combined. The question is this: what kind of person do you want to be when you are the only one who can see what is happening? Because the road puts you in that position constantly, you are moving through spaces where systems do not reach, where institutions are not present, where the normal social contracts that govern behavior in cities and offices and organized spaces have dissolved into something rawer and more honest. Out there, in the particular solitude of a long highway at night, you find out who you are when no one is watching, and there is no reward for doing the right thing and no consequence for not doing it. Dora Reyes had been answering that question for over 20 years, on back roads in West Texas where the nearest town was 40 miles in either direction, on mountain passes in New Mexico in November when the weather changed in 20 minutes, on long stretches of I-10 and US 290 and Farm Road 1431 winding through the hill country at dusk. She had answered it the way anyone answers the important questions in life. Not once, definitively, but over and over in small moments, building something one decision at a time. Iron Magnolia was built on the same answer, not on bylaws or mission statements or the formal architecture of organized groups, though it had all of those things too. It was built on a shared understanding of what it meant to be the kind of person who stops, who sees something happening on the side of the road and does not calculate the cost of stopping before deciding whether to stop. Who shows up when called, at midnight, with blankets and pozole and no questions about whether it is convenient. That is the culture. Culture is not what you write down. Culture is what you do when nobody is keeping score. And the road is always keeping score. Is the morning after she got back from Kyle, after the apartment and the paperwork and the long drive home in the dark, Dora woke up before dawn and went for a ride. Not a destination ride, just a ride. FM 1431 out of Austin, heading west toward Marble Falls, through the cedar and the limestone and the particular silence of the hill country before the day has started. She rode for 2 hours. She did not think about much. That is the thing about the road, the real thing. It does not ask you to think. It asks you to be present, to keep your eyes open and your hands steady and your attention on what is directly in front of you. Everything else for a little while can wait. She stopped at a pull-off above Lake Travis as the sun was coming up. She cut the engine and sat on her bike and watched the light change across the water, orange to gold to the particular clear blue that only exists in the first 20 minutes of a Texas morning before the heat of the day sets in. She thought about Maya, about Rosie's face in the highway light, about the 31 vehicles that had passed and the one that hadn't. She thought about the woman on the guardrail years ago, who had stayed until Dora's breathing was back to normal. She thought about the man with the pickup truck and the camper, who had refused to take any money and driven off with a wave. She thought about all the people who stop, not the ones who make the news, not the ones in any story. Just the people all over this country on every highway and back road and quiet street who see something happening and pull over. Who are inconvenienced, who are uncertain, who do not know what they are stepping into, and who stop anyway. They are out there, more of them than you think, moving through the world quietly, not announcing themselves, not keeping track, just doing the thing and then riding on. The sun was fully up by the time she started the engine again. She put her helmet on and pulled back onto FM 1431, heading back toward Austin, toward her life, toward the next thing. The road stretched out ahead of her, clear and straight and warm in the morning light. It asked her nothing she wasn't ready to answer. She rode. The end.